Hey, good evening, y'all. I'd like to share a story with you. Whether or not it's true or paraphrased is a non-issue. It's just an interesting story, and I want y'all to hear it. A long time ago, far, far away, there was a planet, an overpopulation problem, and massive destruction. And the planet was eaten alive by the population. A new planet was found by the species, the dominating species on the planet. So they opted to move to that planet. But they needed to find who the entities were who destroyed the first planet, the one that they had to abandon, their home planet. So on the new planet, they went ahead and went over, the warriors went over to the new planet and set up a life museum and built some cities and set things up the way they were supposed to be, with free energy and stuff like that, murderless meat, because there's no circus science in the real world. And then they built a small version of the universe, a simulation of it. And everybody who's coming to the real world has to go into the simulation. In the simulation, 10 years is like 15 minutes in the real world, where the simulation is sitting in the real life museum. Now, the entities lay in escrow everything that they have, so that when they come out of the simulation and go to the next timeline for decompression, to make sure that all memories of those who didn't make it, who didn't graduate, those who were found to be the contaminants, they were purged from their memories and all things that happened during the spirit scan. So those entities would get what's in escrow, plus what was laid in escrow by the non-graduates. You see. So they were brought to the spirit scan over the course of 10,000 years or so, during which the scan was in play. And those who graduated went to the next timeline when they died, while those who did not graduate went into the time loops as their victims and as slaves to repay their debt to the simulation mechanism. And then, after the time loops, they were spiritually executed to never get born in the decompression timeline, which is simply a replay of the spirit scan timeline, but without those offending entities, those contaminants, being born in it. So the timeline actually plays twice. It's a temporary timeline that plays twice. Now, the entities that graduate to the real world, they go into the next timeline. But there's also, of those entities, because there's two deities. Of the two deities, there's a lesser deity that is going to maintain the simulation universe and live inside the mechanism with those that were true followers of that deity. Now, in the spirit scan is set up an artificial intelligence that is designed to program the entrants, the candidates, those who get born there as humans. It's designed to program them to accrue a debt to the mechanism so that they will never get out of it. So it starts young, programming them to a lack of empathy, like for animals and other people. And then they accrue a debt, which also affects their existence while they're here in the mechanism. Now, those who graduate to the next timeline eventually graduate to the real world. And then they get to come to the museum and look inside the spirit scan. They get to look at the universe and see the world and stuff. They get to look through these little portals that you can look in. And they get to see the different timelines that were in play to make it possible to find out who destroyed the home planet. They get to see the time loops in play because for some entities, they last for quadrillions of years. Spirit scan time. Now, the lesser deity is also in the restored version of his earth because it all got undone. And then after the second timeline, the replay of the first timeline, it was undone and restored again. So it was given to him for a third and final everlasting play with his few entities, humans that graduated, that were attached to his spirit, who also were existence. They are existence. They exist to maintain the world in the simulation. But the restored world, the world that has free energy, the world that has murderless meat, the world that is uncontaminated, the world that has no self-entitled, self-absorbed entities, no entities, there's no fame, there's no computers, and there's no lazy people, there's no greedy people, there's no bankers, like the feds, what they had in the spirit scan. There's no making people sick to make a profit from their illness, making animals sick. There's no affliction. The lion lays with the lamb and the wolf lays with the lion. So it's like both the real world and the simulation, after the story has played out, emulate each other. Just in the one world, the real world, they're with the higher deity. And in the simulation version, they're in a museum and they're smaller and on a smaller scale, exist on a smaller scale, but everything is just as good as it is in the real world, because the spirit scan version of the world that was designed to protect the real world from those who destroyed the home world, the spirit scan was flawless. And I thought that was an interesting story, that there's a lot of entities that don't make it to the replay timeline and into the real world in this story. It's like the overpopulation problem gets solved, and the problem of there were entities that were like parasites who would destroy their own host. They get found out on a temporal level because everybody was equipped with non-tamperable, non-deletable spirit memory that even recorded their thoughts and omissions. So it was like a beautiful thing to think it up, to protect the real world in case, you can't find another one. And you don't want to let entities keep destroying your home every time you get a new home. So the best thing to do is figure out a way to find out who they are. This concludes that story. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that you think about it and try to see the similarities.